Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is Amazon's new 7-inch Fire tablet, which sells for about $60 and up and was just released on June 29th, 2022. It's the most powerful of the 7-inch models from Amazon to date, but it's still an entry-level device. It has the same processor and memory as an entry-level Fire HD 8, but sells for about $30 less. And that's because it has a lower resolution display, a mono speaker, and a couple of other things that make it a little bit cheaper. But in some ways, the small size is actually an advantage, even if the screen is not necessarily as sharp or some of the features aren't quite as impressive, because it just makes it a little bit easier to put in your pocket, for instance, because you can see the difference between the 7-inch and the 8-inch model. It's also the first device that ships with Fire OS 8, which is a fork of Android 11. Earlier models have been shipping with Fire OS 7, which is based on Android 9. And in terms of practical differences, there's not really that many, but there are a few, and that's what I wanted to go over in this video. Fire OS 8 probably will be coming to some of Amazon's other devices in the future, but it ships first on this 7-inch model. Before I get into the differences between Fire OS 7 and 8, though, just to show you a quick, sort of size comparison here, this is the latest Kindle Paperwhite, and you can see that in terms of size, it's a little bit wider, the Paperwhite is, but they're very similar in terms of screen size, and I think this might actually be a little bit more pocketable depending on how large your pockets are. Now, compared to a 10-inch Amazon tablet, the Fire HD 10, this is the 2019 model that I've got right here, and you can see that is much larger, and it's probably going to be a better option if you're playing games, watching movies, reading comic books, magazines, periodicals, things like that. But the 7-inch model is really nice because of its portability, if you can sort of get used to the lower resolution display. So I'm just going to prop that next to the 2020 Fire HD 8 because they're pretty similar in a lot of ways, but this version is running the newer version of Fire OS. So the first thing you'll notice here is when I swipe down the notification tray, I don't know why it's still downloading this, it's been doing that forever, we've got a little bit more, or a little bit different color here on Fire OS 8. We've got more of a red accent theme. You also can customize this menu a little bit more, choosing which items do and don't show up in the notification shade. And there's a couple of options in here that you don't see on the Fire OS 7 versions. For instance, there is support for dark theme, which changes everything to make it a little bit easier to view in dimly lit environments or at nighttime, or maybe it's just easier on your eyes in general. I tend to be a fan of dark theme, but I'll just show you real quick the difference between those two, and we'll go into that a little bit more later. And there's also a screen recording option here where I can press this, choose to record audio, show screen presses, and start making a little video of what's going on in the screen if I wanted to do that. Stop the screen recording, go back to the home screen, and now I can watch that screen recording like a video. So that's built in now. So that's from the notification differences. Let's go ahead and open up the settings, and I'll just show you real quick here. Device options, system updates. You can see that we are running Fire OS 7.3.2.3 on the right here, and version 8.3.1.1 on the left. And again, the difference is underlying that is that this is based on Android 9, this is based on Android 11. For the most part, though, the user interfaces look very similar, but one thing you might notice here is if we come to the main settings screen, everything's a little bit more colorful in Fire OS 8. So we've got the same basic icons for things like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, apps, notifications, battery, but now we've got just a little bit more color. I don't know if it makes it easier to find, but it makes it maybe just a little bit easier on the eye. Now, when you dig into most of these, they look pretty similar, though. There are some differences in the way things are laid out, though. So now you see the recently opened apps in the apps and notifications section is aligned here on the top in sort of more of a grid view, whereas here it's aligned in the list view, but underneath that, most of your options are pretty similar. Battery options are pretty much the same here. There is support for a dark theme, as we discussed previously, and that is new, but otherwise the display settings are largely the same, including support for blue shade if you wanted to reduce brightness at a certain time of day, or reduce the blue light, rather. Sound, no major differences. Storage, the view is a little bit different. So here you can see how much internal storage and how much internal storage, but it also just gives you a little bit of an overview at the top. And when you click on them, you can see the view is a little bit different. Here we've got this bar across the top. Here we've got a sort of percentage. And then if you wanted to click through to, say, the photos, well, that opens up the actual photo app. Let's do apps and games here instead. So you can get more information about what is using your storage. Security and privacy, no major differences. Accessibility, device options, for the most part, things are largely the same. So the biggest differences really are having to do with some of the color options, the fact that you've got the night mode, you've got that screen recorder. There is also support for high efficiency image file format images. TLS 1.3 security is enabled by default, and apps can access device location while running in the background. That's something that's a little bit harder to show on a device that I'm just starting to play with here, but there you go. Apps also have some more restrictions on starting activities in the background, which should help reduce power consumption, and that's a carryover, again, from the move to Android 11. And when granting permissions to, say, storage, etc., you can also now grant one-time permissions to an application and say, I want to let it use the camera, for instance, or access location or storage now, but I don't want to make that permanent. So next time I open the app, you'll have to ask me again. So those are some of the changes. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time playing with the new Fire 7 tablet and probably provide some more updates to let you know what else you can do with it. But overall, I think Fire OS 8 is going to be really pretty familiar to anybody who's used a Fire tablet before. It's going to be maybe a little bit unusual for somebody who is used to Android, but in terms of having a tablet that's a little bit more expensive than the previous entry-level models, but still very portable, very affordable, I think is an interesting option. I do prefer the higher resolution, higher pixel density display on the 8-inch model, but I was pleasantly surprised when I took this out of the box to find that a 6-inch tablet really does feel more like something that's easy to hold in the hand if you're, say, reading a book or something along those lines. It's a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller, and that could actually be a nice thing to help set it apart from the larger models. Up until now, I've really kind of said nobody should buy the 7-inch version. If you can spend a little bit more, you should get the 8-inch model. But now, for $30 less, you're getting most of the same features, but a lower resolution display and a mono speaker instead of stereo. And so for reading, as opposed to necessarily playing games or watching movies or something, although you could do those as well, I think that this is not necessarily a bad option. Not the best tablet you can get, but possibly one of the best that you can get for $60. This is Brad Linder with Liliputing. Stay tuned to liliputing.com for more details about the Fire 7 tablet, and you can also check out our comparison to see how the specs of the Fire 7, Fire HD 8, and Fire HD 10 all stack up against one another.